My name is Jasmine, and on Christmas Eve, my parents decided I was no longer their problem. The front door swung open with force, warm golden light spilling onto the snow-covered porch like a threshold I was no longer allowed to cross. My father, Harold Bennett, dropped my scuffed navy suitcase onto the frozen wood planks with a thud that seemed to echo through the quiet suburban street. My mother, Patricia, stood rigid behind him in her cream cashmere sweater, arms folded tight across her chest, her eyes already dismissing me like I was a stranger who'd overstayed her welcome. And then there was Lila. My younger sister leaned against the mahogany banister in her designer jeans and holiday sweater, a smile playing at the corners of her glossed lips. That smile, God, that smile, said everything her words were about to confirm. "Let's see how you manage out there, Jazz," she said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. She pulled out her phone, angling it just right to catch my humiliation. Should make for great content. I opened my mouth to respond, to plead, to ask what I'd done to deserve this, but my father cut me off. "You've had 5 years to get your life together, Jasmine. 5 years of excuses. We are done carrying you." "But Dad, I just lost my job today. I told you that. I just need a little time to..." "Time?" My mother's laugh was cold, brittle. "You're 32 years old. When does the time run out? When does the responsibility begin?" The door slammed shut before I could answer. The deadbolt clicked with finality. Through the frosted window beside the entrance, I watched the porch light flicker once, twice, then go dark completely. Just like that, I was outside. No car, they'd taken back the keys months ago. No cash, my last paycheck wouldn't hit until after the holiday. No plan. Just one suitcase packed with whatever they'd bothered to throw in, and the clothes I was wearing, jeans, a thin sweater, and a coat that was stylish but not built for a Chicago winter. Oh, and my boots. Thick, insulated snow boots my grandmother had given me 3 Christmases ago. The warmest thing I owned. The snow had started falling harder now, thick flakes swirling in the glow of street lamps, sticking to my hair and eyelashes like tiny frozen accusations. I grabbed the suitcase handle, the plastic cracked and cold against my palm, and began walking. I didn't know where. Just away. Away from the house where I'd grown up. Away from the family who just turned me into a ghost. My fingers went numb within 2 blocks. My breath came out in sharp, painful clouds. The suitcase wheels caught on patches of ice, jerking my arm with each stumble. I didn't cry. Not yet. Some stupid, hopeful part of me kept expecting to hear footsteps behind me, my father's gruff voice calling me back, admitting this had gone too far. The footsteps never came. By the time I found Lincoln Park, a small neighborhood green space tucked between brownstones, my legs were shaking from cold and exhaustion. One wooden bench sat beneath a flickering street lamp, already blanketed in white. I collapsed onto it, hugging myself, boots planted in the deepening snow. That's when I saw her. She emerged from the darkness like a spectre, moving slowly through the falling snow with an unsteady gait that made my heart clench. An elderly woman, maybe 70, maybe older, impossibly thin, her frame hunched forward as if the winter wind was trying to fold her in half. Silver hair hung in tangled strands around a weathered face, and a threadbare coat that might have been blue once hung loose on her shoulders. But it was her feet that made me forget my own misery. Bare. Completely bare. Her feet were swollen and discolored, angry purples and blues spreading across the skin like bruises, toes nearly black at the tips. Each step she took left a small impression in the snow, and I could see her wince with every movement. She stopped a few feet from my bench, swaying slightly, one hand gripping a lamppost for balance. When she looked at me, her eyes were roomy but kind, filled with a resignation that broke something inside my chest. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, hoarse and cracking. "Do you know if any of the shelters are still open tonight? For Christmas Eve?" I shook my head, my throat tight. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't have anywhere either." She nodded once, slowly, as if she'd expected exactly that answer. Her gaze dropped from my face to my feet, lingering on my boots for just a moment before she looked away, ashamed to have been caught staring. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't logical. It wasn't smart. It was probably the single most foolish thing I could do in my situation. But watching this woman, this human being who was clearly in far worse shape than me, standing there with exposed feet in the snow while I sat with warm, insulated boots. I couldn't. Before I could second-guess myself, before rational thought could intervene, I bent forward and unlaced my boots. My fingers fumbled with the frozen laces, clumsy and shaking. I pulled them off one at a time, feeling the immediate shock of cold against my socked feet, and stood up. "Please," I said, stepping forward and pressing the boots into her trembling hands. "Take these." She stared at the boots like I'd just handed her bars of gold. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "No. No, I can't, you'll freeze." "I'll manage," I said, echoing my sister's earlier taunt with bitter irony. "You need them more than I do." "But..." "Please," I repeated, and this time my voice cracked. Maybe it was easier to give them away than to think about how I'd need them later. Maybe I just needed to feel like I'd done one good thing on this horrible day. Her hands shook as she sat down on the edge of the bench and pulled the boots on. They were too big for her, I could see that immediately, but she laced them tight, and when she stood again, tears were streaming down her weathered cheeks. She reached forward suddenly, gripping my wrists with surprising strength, and locked eyes with me. "Kindness like this," she whispered fiercely, "never goes unseen." Then she turned and disappeared back into the falling snow, leaving me alone on the bench with frozen feet and no idea what I'd just done. I sat back down on the bench, immediately feeling the cold seep through my wool socks. The initial shock gave way to a burning sensation, then a creeping numbness that started in my toes and spread upward. I tucked my feet under me, trying to preserve whatever warmth was left, but the snow kept falling, and the temperature kept dropping. The tears came then. Finally. Not just for the boots, or the cold, or even being kicked out. It was everything. The job I'd lost that morning, 5 years at Crawford & Associates Architecture, erased with a brief meeting and a severance package that wouldn't cover 2 months' rent. The family dinner I'd walked into just hours ago, hoping for comfort and finding only judgment. Lila's engagement ring, the 3-carat diamond that belonged to my ex-boyfriend, Marcus, who'd apparently decided my sister was the better investment. My parents' faces as they told me I was a disappointment. A burden. A failure at 32. "You're too old to still be figuring it out," my mother had said over the prime rib and roasted Brussels sprouts, her voice clinical and cold. "We raised you better than this." "We can't keep enabling your mistakes," my father had added, cutting his steak with precise movements. "Sometimes people need to hit bottom before they learn." And Lila, showing off that ring, that smile, that perfect life built partially on the ruins of mine. Jazz always was the practice round for the family. You know, the one where you figure out what not to do. They'd all laughed. Even Aunt Diane had chuckled into her wine glass. I pulled my coat tighter, but it was designed for looking professional, not surviving Chicago winters. The wind cut through it like it wasn't there. My phone sat dead in my pocket. I'd forgotten to charge it that morning, back when I still had a job and a family and a future. An hour passed. Maybe 2. I'd lost feeling in my feet completely now, which was almost worse than the pain. I knew I should move, should find somewhere warm, but exhaustion and cold had made my brain slow, syrupy. Each thought took effort. "I'm going to freeze out here," I realized with distant clarity. "This is how it ends." And then I heard them. The sound started low, a purr of expensive engines, perfectly synchronized. I looked up through snow-crusted eyelashes and watched as headlights appeared at the far end of the park, gliding forward like a procession. 1, 3, 7, 12. Black BMWs, not just any black, but that deep, midnight black that only comes with the top-tier packages. They rolled into the park from 3 different directions, silent and precise, surrounding the small green space with mathematical perfection. 19 in total. I counted them twice, certain I was hallucinating from hypothermia. Doors opened in perfect synchronization, the soft thunk of German engineering echoing through the snowy air. Men stepped out, all wearing dark wool overcoats, all scanning the area with professional intensity. Not threatening, exactly, but absolutely alert. Like Secret Service agents or private security for someone important. And then she appeared. The same woman. The same face. But she wasn't barefoot anymore. She wasn't hunched or trembling or wearing a threadbare coat. She walked toward me in a floor-length charcoal cashmere coat that probably cost more than my entire year's salary had been, elegant leather gloves, and shoes that whispered money with every step. Diamonds flashed at her wrists as she moved, not gaudy, but unmistakable. Her silver hair, which had been tangled and wild before, was now pulled back in an elegant twist. Her posture was straight, commanding. This wasn't a woman who needed help. This was a woman who owned boardrooms. She stopped directly in front of me, her eyes dropping to my feet, which were now completely white with snow accumulation, my socks soaked through and frozen. For a long moment, she just looked at them. Then she raised her gaze to meet mine. "I've been waiting a long time," she said quietly, her voice no longer hoarse but clear and refined, "to meet the kind of person who gives away their last protection when no one is watching." I couldn't speak. My jaw had locked from cold and shock. She gestured, and immediately one of the men approached with a thermal blanket, wrapping it around my shoulders. Another brought a thermos of something hot, coffee, I realized as the steam hit my face. A third carefully examined my feet, his expression concerned. "She needs medical attention," he said in a clipped, professional tone. "Early stages of frostbite." "Hospital, then." Immediately, the woman responded. "But first, I need 5 minutes." She sat down beside me on the bench, this elegant woman in her $1,000 coat, sitting on a snow-covered park bench like it was a conference room chair. She folded her gloved hands in her lap and turned to face me fully. "My name is Eleanor Ward," she said, "and I need to explain what just happened to you." I managed to nod, my teeth chattering too hard to form words. "Every Christmas Eve for the past 23 years, Eleanor continued, her breath forming clouds in the frozen air, "I walk through this city disguised as someone with nothing. No money, no protection, no safety net. My security team follows at a distance. We go to different neighborhoods each year, different parks and street corners. And I watch." She paused, studying my face. "I watch how people react when they encounter someone suffering. Most walk past. I don't blame them for that. Some offer words, maybe $1 or $2. Some call services. All of those are fine responses. But I'm looking for something specific." "What?" I managed to croak out. "Choice," she said simply. "I'm looking for the person who makes the choice that costs them something real. Who gives sacrificially, without expectation, when they have every reason to protect themselves instead." She gestured toward the BMWs. "My team followed you after you gave me your boots. We watched you sit here for 90 minutes. You didn't chase me down. You didn't demand them back. You didn't call out for recognition or try to turn it into a social media moment like I've seen others do. You just sat here, accepted the cold, expected nothing." "I don't understand," I whispered. Eleanor's expression softened. "I own Ward Industries. Maybe you've heard of it? We manufacture medical equipment, operate 3 charitable foundations, and have holdings in real estate across the Midwest. I built the company over 40 years from a small clinic supply business my late husband and I started in our garage." I had heard of Ward Industries. Everyone in Chicago had. They were a multi-billion-dollar empire. "I'm 74 years old," Eleanor continued, "and I don't have children. No heir. No one I trust to carry forward what I've built, not just the wealth, but the responsibility that comes with it." Eleanor stood, extending her gloved hand to me. "I'm offering you a room, a job, and a chance. Not charity, Jasmine. I know your name now. We looked you up after you gave me the boots. But responsibility. An opportunity to learn what real power looks like and what it costs to wield it correctly." I stared at her hand, my brain struggling to process. "Why me?" "Because you made a choice when you had nothing left to lose, and you chose compassion over self-preservation. That's rare. And it's exactly what's needed to steward the kind of resources I'm talking about." The medical specialist cleared his throat. We really need to get her to the hospital." Eleanor nodded. "Of course. Jasmine, you can accept my offer or decline it. There's no pressure. But either way, you're coming with us now to get treated. Then we'll put you up in a hotel for the night so you can think clearly. Tomorrow, if you're interested, we'll talk details." I didn't remember standing up. Didn't remember the ride to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The emergency room became a blur of warm lights, heated blankets, doctors examining my feet and murmuring about caught it in time and lucky. They kept me overnight for observation, and when I woke up the next morning, there was a basket beside my bed containing clothes in my exact size, toiletries, and a handwritten note on heavy cardstock. Breakfast at the Langham at 10 a.m. Room 2847. Only if you want to. E.W. I went. What followed was the hardest 6 months of my life. Eleanor wasn't offering a fairy tale rescue. She was offering a crucible. I moved into a guest suite in her Lincoln Park brownstone, not the mansion I'd imagined a billionaire would own, but an elegant, surprisingly modest historic home with a view of the park where she'd found me. Every morning began at 6 a.m. Coffee with Eleanor in her study, while she walked me through the previous day's decisions at Ward Industries. What worked? What failed? Why? She made me defend positions I didn't fully understand yet. Made me research. Made me think 3 steps ahead. By 8 a.m., I was in meetings. Real meetings, not as an observer, but as a participant. Board meetings where executives argued over budget allocations. Foundation meetings where we decided which grant applications to fund. Strategy sessions about hospital equipment contracts and manufacturing efficiency. Eleanor threw me into the deep end and watched me thrash. I made mistakes. God, so many mistakes. I approved a grant to an organization that turned out to be poorly managed. I recommended a supplier who couldn't meet our quality standards. I fumbled through a presentation to the board that Eleanor later described as painful to witness. But she never coddled me. Never made excuses for me. She'd simply say, "What did you learn?" and make me write a detailed analysis of what went wrong and how I'd prevent it next time. At night, I'd collapse into bed, exhausted, my brain too full to even process what was happening. Some mornings I'd wake up certain I'd dreamed the whole thing, that I'd open my eyes and be back on that frozen bench. But Eleanor was always there, sharp and demanding, pushing me to be better. Kindness without discipline fails, she told me one evening after I'd advocated too passionately for a charitable cause without proper vetting. And discipline without kindness destroys. You need both. By summer, I wasn't the shivering girl on the bench anymore. I'd learned how to read financial statements, how to challenge assumptions in board meetings, how to identify genuine need versus manipulation. Eleanor had enrolled me in evening business courses at Northwestern, and I discovered I actually had a mind for this, for strategy, for systems, for understanding how money could be a tool for change rather than just accumulation. I'd also learned about myself, about how my family had conditioned me to accept less, to shrink, to apologize for taking up space. Eleanor didn't allow that. When I'd hedge or soften my statements, she'd cut me off. Say what you mean, Jasmine. People who control resources have a responsibility to be clear. And then, in late July, my family came back. The first message was from my mother. A text that appeared on my phone one humid evening. Jasmine, we need to talk. It's urgent. I didn't respond immediately. Eleanor noticed my tension at dinner. What is it? She asked, setting down her fork. I showed her the message. She read it, then looked at me steadily. What do you want to do? I don't know. Yes, you do. You're just afraid to admit it. She was right. I was afraid. Afraid of the pull of old patterns, of falling back into the role of the family disappointment who'd do anything for scraps of approval. 3 more messages came over the next week. Then a call from my father. Then Lila showed up at Ward Industries headquarters, somehow talking her way past security to the reception desk. Finally, I agreed to meet them. Not at Eleanor's home. That felt like letting them into my new life. Not at their house. I wasn't ready for that. We met at a cafe in River North, neutral territory. They looked different. My father's suit was off the rack, not the tailored pieces he'd always worn. My mother's jewelry was minimal. And Lila, perfect, polished Lila, had dark circles under her eyes and a Louis Vuitton bag I recognized as 2 seasons old. Jasmine, my mother began, reaching across the table like we were old friends, we've been trying to reach you for weeks. I've been busy. We can see that, my father said, and something in his tone made my skin prickle. Working for Eleanor Ward. That's quite the opportunity you've landed. It's not luck, I said quietly. It's work. Of course, he continued smoothly. We are proud of you, sweetheart. We always knew you'd figure things out eventually. Lila jumped in, her smile brittle. Jazz, the thing is, we've hit a rough patch. Dad's investments didn't pan out like he expected, and the market has been brutal. We lost the house. There it was. Marcus left me, Lila continued, her voice cracking. Turns out he was just with me for what he thought the family had. And now we need help. Just temporarily. Just until we get back on our feet. My mother's hand tightened on mine. Your family, Jasmine. Family helps family. Surely Eleanor has taught you that with all her charitable work. I looked at each of them. Really looked. Saw the calculation behind the smiles. The desperation masquerading as reconciliation. I pulled my hand back slowly. How much do you need? Hope flared in their eyes. My father started to speak, but I held up my hand. Actually, let me rephrase. How much do you want? Because there's a difference between need and want, and I've learned a lot about that distinction lately. The cafe suddenly felt very quiet despite the ambient noise around us. Jasmine, don't be cruel, my mother said, her voice taking on that familiar edge. We're in trouble. Real trouble. I know, I said calmly. And I'm not going to give you money. Lila's facade cracked completely. Are you serious? After everything we did for you? 32 years of what, exactly? I interrupted, my voice level but firm. Of telling me I was a failure? Of kicking me out on Christmas Eve? Of recording my humiliation for entertainment? My father's jaw tightened. We were teaching you a lesson. Tough love. And look, it worked. You're successful now. I laughed, actually laughed. It felt strange and liberating. Is that what you're telling yourselves? That freezing me out was some kind of gift? Jasmine, please, my mother's voice broke. We are going to lose everything. I reached into my bag and pulled out 3 business cards. I'd prepared for this moment, knowing it would come eventually. I'd learned that much from Eleanor. Anticipate, plan, never react from emotion alone. This first card, I said, sliding it across the table, is for a financial counselor who works on a sliding scale. She's excellent at helping people rebuild from difficult situations. The second card is for a housing assistance program that Ward Industries partners with. They help families find affordable apartments and navigate the application process. The third is for a career counselor who can help you all identify realistic job opportunities and update your skills. I looked at each of them in turn. I'm not giving you money. I'm giving you what I give everyone who asks the foundation for help. Resources, guidance, and the opportunity to rebuild. No shortcuts. No rescue. Just support if you're willing to do the work. My sister's face flushed red. You're seriously going to let us suffer? Your own family. I'm going to let you experience the same thing you let me experience, I said. The opportunity to figure out who you are when no one's carrying you. If tough love worked so well for me, I'm sure you'll all be fine. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is what you've become? Cold? Heartless? That woman has poisoned you. No, I said, standing to face him. Eleanor Ward taught me the difference between enabling and empowering. Between charity and dignity. Between helping and hurting. You 3 will figure it out, or you won't. But either way, it won't be on my conscience. I left them there in the cafe, walked out into the Chicago summer heat, and felt lighter than I had in years. A year later, I stood at a podium in front of 500 people, looking out at the crowd gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the Ward Foundation's newest project, a winter housing campus designed to ensure no one in Chicago would have to spend a night freezing on a bench. The building behind me was beautiful, sustainable design, warm lighting, dignity built into every choice. Private rooms, not bunks. Counseling services, job training, medical care. Everything I'd wished existed that Christmas Eve. I'm going to tell you a story, I began, my voice steady and clear. About a night when I lost everything, and what I learned about kindness when no one was watching. I told them about the boots. About the choice. About how the coldest night of my life had led to understanding what warmth really meant, not temperature, but human dignity. I didn't name my family. Didn't need to. The story wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about transformation. As I spoke, I caught movement at the back of the crowd. 3 familiar figures, standing apart from the others, listening. My mother had tears on her face. My father's expression was unreadable. Lila looked down at her feet. She was wearing practical shoes now, not designer heels. I didn't wave. Didn't acknowledge them. Just finished my speech about second chances and the responsibility we all have to lift each other up without tearing ourselves down. When I descended from the podium, a little girl with braids and a yellow dress tugged on my coat sleeve. "Excuse me," she said shyly. "Are you the lady who helped build this place? My mom says you're why we have somewhere warm now." I knelt down to her level, seeing myself in her uncertain eyes, remembering what it felt like to have nothing. "I'm one of the people who helped," I said, smiling. "But you know what? Someday, you might help build something too. Would you like that?" She nodded eagerly. "Then remember this day," I told her. "Remember that someone gave you warmth. And someday, when you have the chance, give someone else theirs." She hugged me quickly, then ran back to her mother. I stood, straightening my jacket, tailored now, professional, the uniform of someone who'd earned her place. Eleanor stood a few feet away, watching with approval in her eyes. Beyond her, I saw my family still standing at the edge of the crowd, uncertain whether to approach. I took a breath, then walked toward the building's entrance, toward the work that still needed to be done, toward the life I'd built from frozen feet and borrowed boots. "Let's see how you manage," my sister had said that Christmas Eve, her voice dripping with mockery. I'd managed just fine. Better than fine. I'd managed to become exactly who I was meant to be.